All right. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lindsay Ryder. I'm currently the literacy coach at Proctor Elementary School. And I'm really excited to talk about Writer's Workshop with you today and talk a little bit about the immersion piece that we've been learning about and trying to implement here at Proctor. Our agenda today, we've already done our Jamboard. We will do a quick overview of Writer's Workshop. Then we will dig into the meat of our presentation with immersion, and then we will have time for any questions at the end. So just a quick overview here. This is the layout of a typical writer's workshop. The writing block includes 3 different blocks of time. You have your mini lesson, your practice and independent writing, and your closing. So the mini lesson should be short and targeted. If you have a 30-minute writing block, your mini lesson should be 5 to 10 minutes. If you have a little bit of a longer block, it could be up to 15. This is where you are teaching the students about something very targeted. For instance, you might be talking about just topic sentences or a hook for that day. During that time, you model and practice with the students, and then students go off to their independent writing practice and practice the skill from the mini lesson. So if your lesson was again on topic sentences or hooks, students would go into their writing notebook and practice that either on an existing writing piece that they've already started. They could go back and revise their topic sentence, or they could start a new piece that day. The students will continue to write throughout that block. So if you have a 30-minute block, students should be writing for 15 to 20 minutes. If you have a longer block, they can be writing for longer. But the general rule of thumb is that students should be writing for at least 50% of your total block. During the independent writing block, teachers can be pulling strategy groups and one-on-one conferring with their.
I know a lot of you teach different grades. I think we need to ask the question about first graders and kindergartners, because there's no way you can do a 45-minute writing block with them all out by themselves.
I had the same thought.
Okay.
All right, can you hear me now? Thank you for letting me know. Just after you said that, I got a warning. Were there just comments that anyone wanted to share?
Well, some of us teach first grade, so we're sitting here, we've done the writer's workshop thing, and we're like, there's no way in the beginning of the year that we can do this long. It's got to be guided, and it has to be one-on-one or just small groups. So I guess if you get a chance to go over different grade levels, like what the expectation would be, that'd be really helpful.
So that's a great point, Erin. In the beginning of the year, you're going to start and build their stamina in writing. But in younger grades, that might be drawing a picture and labeling. So they should be able to, for several minutes, be able to draw. And then maybe it's just labeling for a couple of minutes, something like that. But they should, drawing can be a form of writing in kindergarten and first grade. Does that help, Erin? Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you. Because I was just sitting here pondering. I'm like, I've done this for 18 years and there's no way I've ever had the beginning of the year that long of a block.
Yes, no, and the same in reading. We always have to build their stamina for independent reading. Start small with those clear expectations and work your way up, for sure. Does anyone want me to go back through that slide, or did you all read it and you have no other questions and we can move on? All right. So let me share my screen again. Hopefully it will work this time. How about now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, so immersion. What is it? What's the purpose? And how do we put it into practice? So immersion is what we do at the beginning of a new writing unit. It's where we introduce students to a new genre of writing. This part of the unit can last anywhere from a few days to up to 2 weeks or so. It's where we're able to set clear expectations for the writing genre and provide opportunities for students to see the whole picture before we start teaching them the individual parts. It's inquiry-based, so students have the opportunity to discuss what they notice about a particular genre of writing. Together as a class, We chart the list of craft moves that we notice during this immersion piece and what we can incorporate into our own writing. So throughout the immersion process, you'll use a variety of texts. Students will pick apart those mentor texts together and talk about how they could implement those into their own writing throughout the unit. Choosing one solid mentor text can be really helpful because you can come back to it throughout the entire unit. You might have more, but one general text can be really helpful that you just keep referring back to, and it becomes very familiar to the kids. It's important to include real life examples during this part so that students have buy-in and realize why it's important for them to learn this particular genre of writing. And I'm going to give you some examples of this in just a minute. Through this process, we are teaching students to read like a writer. So Katie Wood Ray has coined this phrase, and she emphasizes asking the kids the question, what do you notice? And then letting them really pick apart that writing. When students notice something about the text, it's added to the class chart, and then we use that chart to help us plan for our mini lessons. So a couple of years ago, I co-taught a 5th grade opinion writing unit with one of my teachers, and I'm just going to share what we did. I really wish we had a little bit more time and we were in person so that I could actually bring you through the process, but unfortunately for today, I'll just have to explain it to you. But please don't hesitate to stop and ask any questions throughout the conversation. So teachers and students alike in this unit really enjoyed the immersion piece. It was a lot of fun. We felt it had a huge impact on the outcomes at the end. So student writing was so much stronger than we had seen in the past. We started off by reading a simple picture book. Many of you are probably familiar with the I Want an Iguana book or I Want a New Room book. Very simple picture book that we did use in 5th grade. The kids loved it. But we were able to really pick it apart and discuss those craft moves from the story. So we noticed things such as it had an opinion statement. They had reasons to support their statement, why he deserved to get that iguana. We talked about the wording that the child uses. So they write in letter form, but at the very end, he was trying to butter his mother up, if you will, in the way that he signed his letters. So that made it really interesting and engaging. So we came up with a whole list of craft moves from that book. We then gathered a variety of opinion writing and had students work in small groups to do a chalk talk. So we gathered things like letters to the editor from the newspaper, advertisements, and cover letters for jobs. And each group sat down and read those and jotted down what did they notice from those particular examples of writing. Now, again, as Erin pointed out, some of you are teaching younger grades, some older. In the younger grades, you have to guide this a little bit more. 5th graders, we could show them one time and they could kind of take it and work in a group. So it would look a little bit different in 1st grade. And all the kids got to cycle through and really dig into these writing pieces. We then took all of those chart papers from the chalk talk and we created our classroom chart. And I will share an example of the chart in a little bit. And this really gained buy-in from the kids, and they knew what the expectations were moving forward. The final piece we shared with them was actually a student example that was going to be the format that we were asking them to write in 5th grade. So we were being very upfront. Here are the expectations. Here's what it should look like. And this is what you're going to be doing. So once we felt the kids had a good understanding of what opinion writing was, we started writing a shared piece as a class. And at first it was really a bare bones piece, but it allowed us to revise it using our mini lessons throughout the entire unit. It was then time to plan our mini lessons based on what the kids had shown that they knew and what they had noticed in that chart. And about midway through the unit, one of the things we noticed was that students were lacking in supporting their opinions. So we read another super simple book called Duck Rabbit. This picture book has very few words, but as you can see on the slide here, depending on your perspective, it's either a duck or a rabbit. So the kids' job was to pick either side if they believed it was a duck or a rabbit, and they had a debate. And their goal was to get other students to switch sides. And what they discovered was that nobody was switching sides, and all on their own, they decided they had no factual evidence to support their claims. So without having to tell them that that's what we were doing, they came up with it on their own. And I think that is much more powerful than me standing up there and telling them exactly what it is that they need to include in their writing. So I want to just show you real quick the example of the chart. It's not filled in. This is linked, and the PowerPoint will be shared with you, so this resource you can have. Okay, so there's the chart. Like I said, you just fill that out and keep a running list of that. So ultimately, we found that really digging into the genre really helps the kids gain interest, background knowledge in it, and we're not hiding what we're trying to teach them. What I've noticed in the past, myself included in my early years of teaching, was if I had to teach opinion writing, we would teach them, how do you write the topic sentence? How do you write your introduction? Then you go do it. We're going to write the first paragraph, you go do it. We're going to write this third paragraph, so on and so forth. But the kids really didn't understand well enough what we were doing. So this gives them the perspective of why it's important in the real world. As I mentioned, we looked at cover letters for opinion writing. Well, they have to be able to write a cover letter to get a job. So it gained buy-in with that. So what questions do you have? I know that was a super quick run through of that with a lot of technical difficulties, but what questions or comments do you guys have? Has anyone tried the immersion piece of writing before and had success with it or challenges with it?
Hey, Lindsay, I raised my hand, but I don't think you saw it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, go ahead, Barb.
It's okay. So I haven't taught language arts for the last 4 years, but I'm going to be teaching 4th grade next year. And so I'm a little rusty. So I'm just wondering, just overall, if you could share with us some resources of just getting started with the writer's workshop in general. I like the idea of the immersion piece too, but I feel like I need to back up a couple steps myself.
Sure. That immersion piece, I think, will help you and your students. So I think that's a great place to start. Barb, let me send you some things that I have.
I say, Barb, I have some Katie Wood Ray books in my classroom. So
Perfect.
When you're ready, you can obviously borrow them. So
Thanks, Erin.
let me know what you need. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that will be in
Perfect.
August, not now.
Yeah, Katie Wood Ray is a great resource, but Barb, I will definitely share some of the things that I have for you. Anyone else have any? Courtney, you've tried the immersion piece, right? Can you share what you've thought about it?
So I really like the immersion piece. It's something I've always done to a minimal level, but this last year we really tried to beef it up and make it the best that it could possibly be. And I found that when we did it, the students were coming up with thoughts and ideas that I wasn't even thinking of, and they were picking out really interesting things that they saw about the mentor writer's work. And then throughout the course of the unit, as they were writing their pieces, they would keep coming back to the mentor text or the articles we had looked at, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, in that I remember he had the question hook," and then they would try to use a question hook, or their favorite thing to do was try to combine hooks together and have 2 hooks combined into one. But they wouldn't have known what those things were if I had just stood up there and told them. They needed to kind of see it in action and talk about, how does that reader draw you in, or how does that reader give their examples, or how does that reader give you, or author give those reasons? So them seeing it in a professional person's work, I think really, really helped them. They also love student examples. So if I could pull things from past classes and ask them, what do you notice about this? What do you like about what this author did? They really love to do that because they were looking at their peers a little bit older than them, but their peers' work and being able to say, oh yeah, I noticed here they use their opinion sentence in their conclusion. So it was really cool to see them look at other kids' work. That was probably their favorite thing to do.
I think that's such a good point, Courtney, that they were hanging on to that information from those mentor texts that you used. Because I think the other thing we sometimes do is, oh, we taught opinion writing in the fall, we never come back to it. But we really should be cycling that back through the choice writing. And if those kinds of things stick in their mind, they're more likely to continue to implement them. I did see a question on the Jamboard about how do you include specific prompts within the workshop, or should it always be student choice? I think that we found this year, we included a lot more student choice, and the engagement from the students was significantly better than we had seen in the past. I do think that there are going to be times where some students have a hard time with that choice, and so you may need to help them narrow it down. But in general, choice has increased that engagement significantly. I personally, I shared this with the teachers here at Proctor. Choices can be difficult for me because there's that lack of control feeling. But I think the more that we practiced it, the better we got at giving those choices. So usually at the beginning of the unit, teachers had them brainstorm a list of topics they could write about. So they always had a list to go back to if they were stuck. Does that answer your question, Jill, Maggie, and Tegan, or do you need more? Would you like more information on that?
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Sure.
One thing our 3-4 team found too with the choice was you could work choice into what you wanted them to do. So for example, for our opinion writing unit, we crafted a whole unit based on the Who Would Win book series. So the kids were writing in that style of who would win a battle, but they got to pick their two animals that went up against each other. So if you have like a project or something, or a science standard, for example, that went with adaptations and heredity, that you want to fit into your ELA block, you can do that. And then the choice can be kind of snuck in there in that part of, okay, you get to choose whatever two animals you want. And I think the only like boundaries we gave them was it had to be a real animal and it had to be a living animal. It couldn't be an animal that was extinct, and you had to find information on it for your research. But there are ways to sneak that choice in if you wanted to give them more of a structured topic to write about.
Thank you, Courtney. Somebody asked a question, I'm not sure who it was, about how to fit it all in. Does someone want to speak a little bit more to that, and we can certainly discuss that?
I was the one that put that in there. Our school started doing My View this year, and we were told to do the whole thing. And My View has a writer's workshop that does not have, it has to do with the unit that they're doing, but it doesn't have to do with things that kids are necessarily interested in. And just trying to fit everything in. Like you try to do writing, and it usually ends up being this, I don't know if Cindy agrees with me, it's usually this really rushed thing because you have to go back to do the content or the curriculum that the superintendent and our principal have given us to do. So I think that's where my problems. I feel like I might get writing in once a month, like real writing, like a real project, or you're just trying to throw it in there to do it. And our team has been working this year on really trying to assess writing, which is really hard to do when you don't have time to fit writing in.
That is a challenge for sure. One of the things that I would say is when we think about like a real project, Erin, are you thinking about something that we're able to publish to bring to that point?
That's one of the things I've been working on with them. Like they always want that finished project, you know, when you type the book and they get to draw the pictures, especially those first years of writing, or the class book. I think it's just trying to have that finished product or that assessment piece that they're looking for. Yeah.
So I think one of the things we talked about this year was not every piece has to go through the whole writing process. We certainly want them to have some pieces throughout the year, but maybe they have one or two pieces from each writing unit that gets to that published point. So I think that was something that we decided we kind of had to be a little bit more flexible on here at our school. So I don't know, I think we can still assess some of those draft writing pieces to use. Courtney, I don't mean to keep picking on you, but just because you and I have worked together on it this year, would you agree with that? Or
Yes, as you know, Lindsay, that was like my biggest thing was that my kids only had one piece and we started it from start to finish and that was their one piece. But this year we gave them more choice in going back and starting a new piece and they might have had several drafts for each unit. But then at the end, we're like, okay, this week we're going to go through the whole writing process and you're going to pick your favorite piece to take through the publishing process. And that really showed a lot of like student choice. They got to pick like which one they wanted to. So I think it worked really well. And it kept that writing time going. They always had something to be writing about, which in years past, they might finish their piece and then have nothing to do. So it was really helpful in that regard too.
I also see somebody that asked the question about how to implement it in classroom centers. Does someone want to speak a little more to that?
That was me. We are being pushed to a big block of center time and fitting all of our ELA into that block time. And like Erin said, there's just so much that we're expected to do and how to make this all happen with the expectations. It's kind of overwhelming. And, I'm at Wells and we've had so many different writing programs that we don't really have one right now. We're working on getting that. And you can see there's a lot of us from Wells in here. And so our instruction is to have more center-based time. So does that make sense what I'm asking, like how to fit that all in? I know the independent piece will come in there, but I just wanted a clearer picture, I guess, if that makes sense.
Sure. So is your school, Cindy, using the MyView program? No. Okay, that's a different school. How much time do you have in your block?
It's I think because it's changing again this year.
Sure.
And we're getting it tomorrow. Okay. I think Joy might be able to tell me it's 40. 40. No, it's not 40. It's more than 40. I can't remember. It's an hour to an hour and a half, I believe.
For all of your reading and writing?
Sierra or Joy, do you remember what the amount of time was on that?
I think it's 90, Cindy.
Okay. Thanks, Barb.
But yours could be different than mine.
No, I think we're all the same.
Yeah, I don't remember because we've gotten so many variations of the schedule next year. We don't even have the final one yet. So I want to say 90 minutes.
Sound like we don't know what we're doing. We do to a degree.
And so is that 90 minutes, that's supposed to be your reading, phonics, and writing block?
I believe
No,
so.
I think it's reading and writing, right?
I can't.
I
I think there's a separate time for foundations because we're using foundations.
Right.
If we're talking about, the daily 5 or whatever, it's part of the daily 5, but it's a separate piece. And then there's this 90-minute block of, reading, writing, guided reading, writing, reading to self, whatever, however you set up your daily 5. So.
Okay. Yeah, because that is pretty tight to have a daily 5 block and a writing block. In an ideal world, you would have a minimum of 30 minutes of just writing, separate from that daily 5 piece of writing. So I'd have to think about that. But Cindy, I'm more than happy to sit down and look at that with you if you're ever interested.
Yeah, I would love to know. I would love to have some of your thoughts. Yes, please.
Absolutely. When you do get your schedules, if you want to send that to me, I'm happy to kind of work through that and get in touch with you about it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
Lindsay?
Yeah.
One of the things I found this year, because we had to be so social distance and the kids weren't working together, was the report out at the end of what they wrote, even if it was just a free write for the day and they had maybe options or they could choose. But having them be able to come up and present what they wrote and read what they wrote, even for kindergartners, or explaining their picture, like that made, you could see the detail progress, and then I could take note as I went. I wouldn't have to go around and collect and conference with the kid because they were practicing that communication and sharing with their classmates. And then it became a class practice for looking for skills like capitalizations and finger spacing and periods and complementing each other for strengths and areas. And I would say, what do we need to improve upon? And everybody was really good about sharing in positive ways. It took some training on how to talk with each other to do that, but it then saved me from having to conference also with each kid, and that helps too.
That's a great point, Josh. I think sometimes it's super easy to let that closure piece and the sharing piece go because you run out of time, but taking those 5 to 10 minutes is really important. I just saw a hand go up. Joy, did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of comment on what Josh just said and what you just said about time. I just did a self-paced module on Flipgrid, and sad that I didn't utilize it more during remote learning. A colleague of mine did, and she's phenomenal at it, but be a great way for even younger kids just to share their writing. They can just make a quick little video, and then the other kids can respond to it, and there's teacher tools on there so you can preview the videos and stuff before they go up. But it's because technology is my thing, so I'm trying to think about how to integrate more technology into this. Even for the younger kids, I think they could share more of their writing that way, and it would save time.
That's a great point. I did see some teachers do that. Kids would go on and read their writing, and then kids could comment. I love that idea, Joy. Thank you. Any other questions or tips that teachers want to share with one another?
For the immersion part, one of the things, especially in like the nonfiction unit and the how-to writing and stuff like that is, I've found videos to be able to show kids, like this is a video on how to make, what did we make this year? Birdhouses out of recycled materials. And so they're just listening to that language first, and they're picking up on that language. Then when we look at it in a book, they've already kind of heard it, they've seen it, and now they're recognizing it in write. So not to be afraid, especially with little kids in KN1, to use all kinds of media that they can access.
Going off what Josh said, even in 3rd and 4th grade, we used a lot of videos, especially when we did our Who Would Win project. There's like a ton of videos out there about like putting two animals against each other in a battle. And one of my colleagues, our 3rd grade teacher, her kids actually wanted to include a battle scene in their piece, which was something we hadn't thought about because they had like seen the battle scene described in these YouTube videos, and the language that they used in the battle scene and the vocabulary that came out of it was super cool. So like Josh said, even with a little bit older kids, using videos as a way of immersion is a really cool tool.
Mm-hmm. I can piggyback on that. I used a lot of digital bookshelves this year in the Google Classroom. So when we did a Scaredy Squirrel book, they could read all the books over and over again before and they're listen to reading block, they were hearing it. I think one thing, Lindsay, Primary talked about this yesterday, really think that writing should be a district goal, like K6, where we can meet and talk about what kind of writing we want to do, how we want it to look. I don't know if you can help us with that, but it's really something there's no real guide. So maybe having like a district like handbook type thing, you know what I mean? Like this is the goal for, and especially I know Wendy Doust is on here. What should they look like when they go to 7th grade? You know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, Erin. I will make sure that's on the list of things we chat about for next year. I see that discussion happened at Wells as well, and we've had that conversation here at Proctor, looking for those benchmark pieces. What is really expected at each grade level, so that we're all clear and on the same page. And that's something that will take time to develop. We just started doing some of those things around writing about reading here at Proctor. So I think that's a great idea, Erin. Thank you. Any other questions or suggestions? All right, if there aren't any more, thank you all for coming. I'm sorry for the technology challenges I had today. Thank you for being patient. If you guys need anything, don't be afraid to reach out. And I hope you guys all have a great summer.
Thank you, Lindsay.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.